Welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Jack, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. We go back a bit in our consultancy days. So yeah, it's nice to finally get you on this on the third season.
Yeah.
But it hit me straight away. I was just doing some research on you, Jack. Like, apart from the person who I know, but then I was like, actually, maybe some of my guests don't know you. So maybe give us a bit of your log line first. What is your log line?
A log line, which is, I think, always a tough one as a consultant, because we were joking about it before, weren't we? But A, it's a difficult one to explain to grandparents and actually parents. But B, even sort of friends and family, sometimes the blood rushes from their face when you explain it. But no, if I had to say short, sharp, snappy, I think I'm very passionate about helping people and helping companies either grow themselves or create environments for others to be their best. I've this. Someone told me this in my last job, which I loved. It's like no one comes to work not trying to do their best, or no one starts a job not trying to be their best self or do their best. But then eventually, the environment or various other factors can drag them down before they know it, they're not nowhere near where they wanted to be at the start. So I like to think that I try and help either individuals find out what that is, or companies create the right environment for their people to grow.
Nice.
Not really a log line, more of a log paragraph, but
oh, good, because we're going to get into it in a bit anyway. But yeah, I mean, Jack, for my listeners, maybe give us a bit of a brief intro of your kind of career, who you are and where you've come from, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So started at Accenture, which again often gets the blood rushing from people's faces. But and I had a few years there doing big tech digital implementations, actually as an agile coach at one point. And then sort of 3 years into that, I moved into Accenture's innovation team, client innovation services, which was a fantastic move. Loved the work that we were doing there. And then actually towards, I guess, 2 years in, we merged with What If, an agency that Accenture acquired a little bit before that. And then spent my last sort of year or so during my time at Accenture within What If, again, continuing to do innovation work, but then slowly starting to move into What If also did a huge amount of culture change work. So slowly starting to do more and more of that. And that was really what prompted my decision to move to where I am currently, which is a consultancy called Profit, because I wanted to do a lot more of culture change, organizational change work, which is what I've been doing for the last 2 years at Profit. So Profit, much smaller consultancy that most people wouldn't have heard of. Well, we describe ourselves as a growth and transformation consultancy, but really do everything from brand, marketing, experience and innovation, and then culture, which is where I specialize. So the What If era was when you and I met, which actually weirdly feels like a lifetime ago, but very happy days. And yeah, that's sort of where a whistle-stop tour of where I got to where I am today.
Nice. And I want to needle into a lot about a little bit later on. But I want people to I want people to understand the Jack before the consultancy Jack, I guess.
Okay.
But before we do, I want you to pick a number between 1 and 12 for me, please, Jack.
I'm going to go with 4.
4. Okay, perfect. So the number you've just picked links to a killer question, which I have. Cool. And the killer question which you've picked is, and I don't need the answer for this just yet, but it's, what's the one lie you're still telling yourself? Okay.
One lie I'm still telling myself.
Yeah, and we'll come to that a little bit later on.
Wow.
Okay, so Jack, I want to take all the way back to when Jack was in school, a little bit about who he is. I guess the first thing I want to know is when you was in school and the teachers go, Jack, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was the answer you would give?
You believe it's not that I wanted to be a consultant?
I mean, maybe.
It's so interesting because it's like, I don't know, I've got a 3-year-old at the moment, and obviously I'm not asking him those kind of existential questions at the moment. But when you are a lot younger, I guess your dreams probably go into the more slightly less realistic sphere, perhaps, if I may say. So I played a lot of sport. I was really into my rugby at school, and I'm still really into my golf. So I think if they'd asked me then, I would have said that I wanted to be a professional sports person. Depends on when they asked me. I guess when I started realizing that I probably wasn't good enough to make it in that world, I probably started getting a bit more realistic. And I actually studied mechanical engineering. So if you asked me that at the start of my degree, I might have said I wanted to be an engineer. But I think slowly as I moved towards the end of my degree, I realized perhaps engineering wasn't for me. There are lots of transferable elements that I felt I could apply in my later world, but then found the working world and sort of stumbled into consulting really.
It's a fascinating with consulting. I think a lot of people come into consultancy one way or another, but it's never like you say, it's
Yeah,
never a thing of we go, I want to be a consultant.
yeah,
Nobody's ever
exactly.
said that in the world.
Yeah,
So you got into kind of mechanical engineering.
yeah,
Um, but before you got there, I want you to kind of just have a think about when you was a little kid.
yeah.
Can you remember the first time you ever got in trouble?
I remember at school, I think I answered back to a French teacher. Um, I mean, firstly, my French was awful, so she was probably coming in on the front foot to tell me about how badly I'd done. And I think she was like asking. It was at a cricket match, and she was asking around um, who was batting next, and she was asking about like cricket boxes or something. And obviously, I made some like immensely immature joke about a cricket box or something. I think that was the first time where my parents were called in and were like, "No, come on, you can't be doing very inappropriate jokes like that." So that was probably the first time I was like in trouble. But to be honest, I didn't get in loads of trouble. I think at school it was probably more in those situations, like I was with friends, but never anything like seismic or anything that sort of resulted in any massive repercussions. It was probably more just slap on the wrist and little bits in classes.
So where does the love for sport come from? So you mentioned, you was big into rugby, then
Yeah.
you kind of into golf now, and I want to, did as rugby disappeared from your life now, or is it kind of still there
Yeah.
in one way?
So um, combination of things really. My family and my dad specifically is very into his sport. So from a young age, we were always doing things together and have continued to do that into later life. Like we do all sorts of bike trips. He started our local athletics club, so me and my siblings would always go to that. So that was where it sort of was fueled at an early age. And I have a younger brother, and we're really close and often would do things like that together all through the school holidays, go up to the golf club and just play for hours. So I think that was where the love of sport really started. And then the school that I went to was also very big in sport, and sort of I was taken on board, if you like, by the rugby team there, and was massively punching and trying to survive and stay in the team. But I think that did help me over the years, fall in love with it a bit more because I was trying to grow and trying to develop, but then also learn a lot in the process. And I'm a big believer that certainly for me personally, my experiences with team sport has taught me a huge amount that I feel like I've taken into the working world. And if I were to look at where I feel like my strengths are now, I feel like a good chunk of them come from those experiences. So yeah, luckily it stayed with me. I played a little bit at university as well. And again, there I was able to do a more leadership role. So that then I believe also transferred into what I hope to do a bit more of now in the workplace. So it's always been quite present. I'm therefore then quite passionate about it outside of actually playing it. Don't play rugby anymore because it was far too difficult on the joints and the body, and also on time. Like as you know, as we get older, time becomes more precious, and I couldn't spend every Saturday playing rugby. But yeah, I felt like I left it at a good time in my career in inverted commas. I didn't do anything obviously professionally, but for me it was I had some lovely years at school, lovely years at university, and then when I started working and getting in a serious relationship and enjoying life outside of rugby, that was also lovely in itself.
Nice. I find it quite interesting the dynamic shift, and maybe not for you too much because, like you say, you was doing golf at a younger age anyway. But you've got one team, you've got one sport over here, which is a rugby, which is all about the team. The kind
Mm.
of it reminds me of that book where they talk about sweeping the shed legacy. is a
Oh
great
yeah,
book.
Legacy is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and is that and I love that. I use that analogy quite a lot, that whole thing of sweeping the shed.
Mm.
But then you've got golf on the other hand, which is a mental game. It's a game where one shot can put you off for the rest of the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's in some ways kind of a solo game. It's a
It
very
is. But did you
so yeah.
watch? I don't know if you're not that into golf, you maybe didn't. But the Ryder Cup was on recently. That was
Okay.
fascinating. So for context, it's and for maybe listeners who don't know what it is, it's Team Europe versus Team USA. 12 best golfers from Europe, 12 best golfers from USA, and then you have a captain who's an ex-player who, well, first he picks the team, but then they make decisions on the pairings. So you put two golfers together against two golfers from the USA. And it was fascinating because, well, firstly, it's a team golf event, which is unique in itself. Secondly, it's brilliant because the fans get so into it. And for golf fans, it's just, the Mecca. But this year, particularly, I thought was really interesting because you had two very different captains and two very different groups of players. And actually, the European team, the captain there, made a huge thing of understanding the team dynamic, the relationships between the players, who to pair with a more experienced golfer versus a rookie. And like he put a huge amount of thought. He used a load of data to look at the pairings that have worked well in the past, but basically trying to get below the individual element and look at how people could work together.
Mm.
Versus the Americans who, okay, I'm sure they did do a little bit of this, but the perception that we got as an audience was that it was more of a team of individuals that perhaps didn't gel as well as a unit. And therefore, when you start putting two players against two players, that cohesion really falls down because if you're playing with someone and you have to, if they're teeing off, you're taking the next shot, they're taking the next shot, you're alternating shots, and you put your partner in the bushes after they've put you in the middle of the fairway, there's a sense of guilt there. And if you don't have a good relationship with them, quite quickly you can fall apart and you start dragging each other down. So the reason I reference it is because I thought it's a really interesting example of an individual sport at a team level where the contrast between a leadership style and the emphasis they put on the culture of that group had a huge impact. Europe won quite comfortably in the end. So yeah, it was a really interesting example of that. But golf generally is a very solo sport and certainly a very mental sport.
Yes, it's definitely one what's testing. I think that's the best way. So I guess my background is football.
Yeah,
I did mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then
nice.
golf. Not so much golf. I enjoy golf, but I'm not like it's not a
Okay.
thing I do every day, every
Yeah.
other week. Um, but I remember the one thing what golf gives me is patience. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is the
Definitely.
one thing what's kind of gone. No, this is how you play chess, and this is how you think ahead,
Yeah.
and this is.
Yeah.
But golf is one where I'm like, because everything it's like you can swing the ball 100 times, and it's just that 1 degree, and it's off. So
Yeah.
there's something around that headspace, I think.
100%. It's also really interesting. All sport actually, or all anything new at our age, and when you're working, when time's really poor, is really hard to learn. Golf, I think, is probably on the more extreme side because it does take a lot of time, both to play it and to learn it. But then the upside of that is that you do push through, and if you do get to the point where you're then able to play golf, I think you do learn a huge amount of patience and probably resilience in some ways. If you see my golf, I think you probably understand. But it's just, I think that and learning anything new at our age, I think when you get to the other end of it, you look back on it, and I think you can then transfer that experience and the learnings from it into so much other stuff that you do. And I feel like golf, even though I learned at a young age, I've seen friends go through that process, and I think there's a lot to take from it that perhaps people don't realize.
Yeah. I think when I think about like the team, the rugby, the football, whatever, even at a mixed martial arts and jits level, like you have a club. The club
Yeah,
is a thing what backs you. So even when you're on the mats and you're rolling and wrestling, you still got that club
massively.
behind you. They're still there.
Yeah,
Um, but the bit which you touched upon on kind of golf, that whole Europe versus I think you said US.
yeah,
Um, I think team dynamic and team effectiveness is something what's just massively overlooked. People want culture change over here,
yeah,
but when they go right, well, you need to start the fires at a low level first and
100%.
foremost. We don't do it, or it's overlooked.
Hmm.
Is that what you've seen in your experience, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the looking at it at a massive organizational level is often the biggest stumbling block. People are paralyzed by the scale of it, and it's like the whole idea of starting really small and actually, I guess, controlling. what you can control as a manager or as anyone who's in a day-to-day, right? You can only really impact your immediate team, and then hope that in doing that, it either cascades and you inspire other teams to do so, or you share learnings and allow them to sort of take what they can from it. But yeah, I think there's a massive element of that. And it's actually, perhaps I'm biased because I think it's probably one of the areas that I've always naturally been stronger in, but I think it's an area that it's quite easy to improve, generally speaking. If you focus on few small things, doing a few of those things well, it can have a disproportionately positive impact on the team dynamic, business performance, a whole load of things. But people either don't often realize that, or perhaps don't prioritize it in the way that you need to in order to feel those effects. So yeah, definitely, I think perhaps not in my immediate teams, but certainly with clients and I guess in my bigger Accenture world, I absolutely saw that.
It's an interesting one. It's a thing of, I think people want the quick fix. They want the big picture, and that often the quick fix comes in the small, like you say, the small tweaks, the small little experiments.
Exactly. Or you're trying to see everything at, I don't know, we have to change everything now. We have to change. We have to behave like this tomorrow. It's understanding that doesn't happen. You have to do it incrementally, not only because you're trying to change in a massive way, but also because like people then view this big thing as something that they can't achieve. And that's the least motivating thing in any walk of life. Like really to change in any way, you need to understand that it's possible and you need to have some success early on. Like that's what Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, they all reinforce, is like, if you're trying to create a new habit, there has to be an element of feeling good. Like you don't really change if you're not feeling good. So, I mean, it's classic, right? But even training for a marathon, you break it right down. Why don't we apply it and go on a 2K run to start? Why don't we apply that same logic in the workplace? And I think we could do more of that with changing behaviors and trying out new ways of working, whatever.
Spot on. And I think you bang on. I think, even when you look at, say, the Premier League, right? Like, to win the Premier League, you have to reverse engineer. This is where you want to end up. Okay, well, let's just take one game at a time. Well, let's go even further. Let's take one training session at a time. So I think you're spot on. But I want to needle in on something, and I'd love your take on this. Like, years ago when I was in school, I think Jack, I think you're younger than me, right? So I'm 40, so I think you're younger than me. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay, this is where Jack says I'm 21 and I've just made it massive.
definitely not.
When I was in school, we didn't have participation medals. We didn't have.
Yeah.
It was like you get up, you train, and you just go for 1, 2, or 3, bronze, silver, gold. And then time and time again, now we're hearing about people having participation medals. And I guess it sounds like from your background, you've got this really, this really kind of sporty family. But your dad, I think you talked about, and like competition is in there, like healthy competition's in there, and being sporty is. Do you see something like this kind of participation being a net positive or a net negative?
Oh, it's such a complex topic, because I think there's like shades of grey. I think ultimately, if you ask me, had to say, I would say it's probably a net negative. But I think there are shades of grey within that, depending on the audience and like what the objective is. Like, is it just that you're trying to get them into sport, or is it that you're trying to help them improve and grow as a person? Get them into something that might be in the workplace or sport. I always love, there's Whiplash, which is a fantastic film. What's this? Is like, there's no more harmful words in the English dictionary than good job. And I think for me, I love that because I use that a lot when I'm trying to think about work and how I'm hopefully helping others develop and like actually giving feedback. But then I also think about it in my own life and actually, how the environment that's helped create me and my dad and other people throughout my life that have been positive and fantastic influences. And also how I'm then thinking about parenting now, although my son's only 3, so he's well away from that. But it's really fascinating. And it comes up the whole time in what you read as well. It's like, if you praise the outcome, I'm veering a little bit away from your question here, but bear with me. If you praise the outcome, like, you're really clever, and you see this all the time with kids in school, like, oh, you're so smart. They then become, throughout the course of their, I guess, learning journey, they become far less likely to take risks and to try new things. And they learn the syllabus, they learn the answers, but they don't learn anything more than that. They don't grow any resilience, and they don't understand what it what failure looks like. Whereas if you praise the process and progress, like, oh, you're such a good learner, and apparently that's been shown even with young children. If you say you're such a good learner versus you're so clever, it can have a massive impact on what people then learn to value. So they prioritize the learning element of it rather than on achieving, the goal and the winning. So I guess to answer your question, I think the participation medal or participation award is a really good thing if you're encouraging people to take part and start getting involved. But I think it becomes quite a dangerous thing if you're looking for people to progress when you start applying it sort of willy-nilly. I think there has to be an element of success and failure, but I think the really important part of the failure part is it's not just, okay, you didn't come in the top 3. Okay, fine, you didn't come in the top 3, but why not? What did you do? And you gave it your best effort, and that's all we can ask you at this point. If you want to get to those top 3, here's the things that I think you could do. And putting a bit more context around it, I think then you start to create a really rich environment that perhaps is, not seen enough of, I don't know, in younger kids. I'm not as involved in those environments, but yeah, it's a complex topic. I think I probably veer towards it's a net negative. I don't know. What are your views on it? Have you had experiences with it in the
So I
past?
don't have no kids, so I'm firmly net negative. Why am I a net negative? I guess I'm a net negative for 2 different reasons. Because I think we talk about resilience and we talk around, I don't know, in school, again, it's an age thing, right? Like it was hard licks, it was getting hard licks, it was going through something
Yeah,
hard and
yeah,
coming out the back of it. And while um, you may not have won the cup or the medal or whatever, there was something around that self awareness what you got, whether you didn't win it or not. It's like, okay. And I don't know. I think something like that, measuring that's hard because you're doing it at someone who's, I don't know, 10, 12,
yeah,
18,
yeah.
like 16. But I do think there's something around, I think there's something around um, promoting good habits. Like, oh, you've tried, like,
100%.
this, but going back to your point, but I think, the award for participation, not so much. It's a real tricky one because if you take that question and then you apply it into the working world,
Mm,
we don't really reward risk takers, right? You've got a lot of the time the organization as a system is set up to reward safety. They're
yeah,
set up to
yeah,
de-risk, and it's a really tricky one. And I think these people who, these young children who are getting the participation rewards, if we fast track that
yeah.
5,
It's
10,
damaging.
15 years, what does that look like then? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer. It's I
I
don't know.
think
It's an
you need some failure throughout your whole life, but particularly in those very formative years from, I don't know, perhaps 10 to 20, some element of failure with the right support around you to
mm,
learn from it and to grow and then apply it is, I think, so important. Well, so valuable perhaps later in life, because if you do manage to get that sort of holy grail of failing in the right way, having the support around you, learning from it, and then applying it in the future, like that's just so valuable later in life. Because as you say, like the big wide world is not as friendly and as supportive as perhaps school is. And yes, companies don't reward risk taking. I do agree with that, but it's more like all the other pressures that you get from life.
yeah.
A bit of resilience building that early on can be very valuable.
It's funny just listening to you like talking through that. Something just popped into my mind as you was explaining it. One of my big failures when I was in school as a young child, I must have been 12. Um, in I don't know if you did this in your school, but you have to throw, jump in, dive for that brick at the bottom of a pool.
Yeah,
Did you ever
yeah,
do
yeah,
that? And
yeah,
honestly, I must have done that about 15 times. And could I do it? Not for the life of me. And I
yeah.
remember there was a moment, there's a moment everyone was getting applauded for getting this fecking brick at the bottom of the pool. And I just got out with my toe to him and I was like, well, that's that then. And to this day, I still
Yeah,
struggle to dive to the bottom of a pool, like just in the water.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, diving off a ledge is fine. But even to this day, I'm like, God damn. But yeah,
It
so
still gets you. Yeah,
haunts me. um, so
amazing.
I think there's a lot of times, as a consultant, you've felt this when you've gone for interviews or when you're in pitching and you've got to kind of say how good you are because that's what we tend to measure. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
more value a lot of time in asking what someone's failure CV looks like.
Mm.
If I was to ask you what's the biggest thing on your failure CV, Jack, what jumps out?
Great question. And like it's funny because we preach it a lot in any kind of culture change work and any form of innovation work because it's such a huge part of that. I'll probably give a couple because they're quite different.
Okay.
So to be fair, this was a little bit older. I was must have been early 20s, so it wasn't at school time, but we were at a friend's house. One of my best friends went actually at his parents' house and they were away. Party, it wasn't a crazy party, but we were having fun. And anyway, I fell over into his table of lovely glassware, basically, and smashed it. And I was fine, fortunately, but yeah, lovely glassware that just completely obliterated, basically. And this was late at night, and I knew the dad, and we had a lovely relationship. But I also knew that he really treasured this glassware, and he was quite, he liked his things. So I sort of ummed and ahed for a while about what to do, and it ended up calling him, in the early hours, and then basically just apologizing straight away, say, look, this has happened. It's all my fault. Was just completely honest with him, basically. And he was coming down to the house anyway the next day. So as soon as he arrived, he gave me a massive hug, was like, thank you for telling me. We'll get through it. We'll not get through it. That sounds very dramatic, but I really appreciate you telling me, basically. And my takeaway from that was that obviously it was terrifying at the time, and I wanted to think of all the different excuses that I probably could have come up with, but actually walking into it head on and saying, this was me, and this is what I'm going to do about it, and actually earned a huge amount more respect, and I guess actually handled the situation much better as a result. So that's taught me, I think, to walk very much into the danger and sort of own it, even if it seems horrible at the time. And don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. I definitely don't do that all the time, but it's certainly with things like that really helped me.
Just for the record as well, when people watching this, Jack was trying to turn the light on in the room.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I was like, what is this madman doing?
Yeah, sunset put me into darkness, and I had to sort of dance around I'm on my own in the room, luckily, so no one could see. So yeah, that was number one. I think the other thing I mentioned my dad and brother and I used to do a lot of cycling events. We did Land's End John O'Groats
Nice.
a little while ago, and on third or fourth day I started getting massive knee pains and basically couldn't continue. But so I had to sit out one of the days, and then the remaining 2 days I had to be sort of shielded behind the other cyclists. I was very much like the sort of invalid that was being carried to the finish line. Anyway, I got to the end, and I was kind of a bit gutted that I missed this 100 miles or so of the total journey. I didn't feel like I'd really done it. So then coming back, my dad sort of sensed that I was gutted and was like, so that's the sort of failure, if you like, even though it was injury related. But on the way back, he was like, basically, we got out of the car driving us back to where we were stopping halfway, sort of 70 miles early or whatever it was. And then we made up the difference in the total over that time, which was like, obviously dad had done the whole thing. So he was unbelievable to do that extra stuff with me. But it was also just this idea of, okay, fine, there's injured, there's a setback, you can do something about it. You're also reacting and going the extra mile for someone else. I was so inspired by that I generally try and apply that in whatever small dose you can in your sort of working world. But yeah, that's always something that I try and take with me. And then, I don't know, final thing, which I guess isn't really a failure, but I do reference it constantly because it's coming up more and more in the fast-paced nature of the world that you and I work in, is dyslexia. So and this is something we've spoken about in the past, and it's not something that impacts me, hugely, but I do feel it when you're trying to move at a ridiculous pace. I need more time on things than other people, certainly that I work with, do. And sometimes that can trip me up if I'm not able to plan it into my work, as I try and do previously. But even if it's just proofreading things one more time, I'm getting better at sort of trying to work within it. But yeah, it's something that has tripped me up in a number of ways over the years.
It's a fascinating one, that one. I was having a podcast recently, actually, and we're talking about kind of neurodiversity and just in general. It's an interesting world we live in, where we go, yeah, you can be yourself here, and you can come in
Yeah.
here and your dyslexia and whatever else. But then when you get there, it's like, oh, but only if you conform and only if you work within our world. And a lot of the time, this kind of neurodiversity is a
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lip service. It's a lip service because the system doesn't bend for people like me and you who have
Yeah.
dyslexia, dyspraxia. How, what, there's people who will listen to this who will be listening and going, oh, well, how does Jack overcome it? Like, what tips would you give someone if you have got dyslexia, dyspraxia, or whatnot? What tips would you give them?
I mean, it's very personal, I would say. Mine is probably not on the extreme side, but so how it sort of shows up with me is my spelling's really bad. I will often in the same sentence either say things in like a different way, or if I'm writing, spell things in a different way. Like there's limited consistency with how I either write or think about things. Like the sort of basic rules of grammar in English, like just don't register with me, no matter how many times I've tried to apply them. The different ways of sort of processing, a bit like this is more on the sort of cognitive diversity side of things, but different ways of processing information. Like I know I'm much better in a room with people rather than reading a screen. So I think that would be the main bit of advice I would say to people is try and understand when you're at your best and when you're not at your best. And as much as you can, construct your day-to-day environment to have as many of those when you're at your best moments as possible. Like I'm coming into
Mm,
the office more than I was doing during COVID, well, not during COVID, but immediately after COVID, for example, because I've seen that I'm much better when I'm in a room or sitting next to my team, and I can either bounce things off them, or when we're talking through things, we can do it verbally and either whiteboard it or whatever. I'm much more effective, and I'm a better learner in those environments. If I'm having to review something that is just reading text and copy, that's when I'm not as effective and not as helpful, essentially. So I either call that out if I'm very comfortable with my team. I'll either call that out and just say, I'll give some comments here, but we'd love to discuss it tomorrow, type thing. Or I try and sort of orchestrate it so I can have those environments where I am able to be my best. And I certainly don't put myself in a situation where I'm the last reviewer on something that needs to be really well crafted and grammatically perfect and great spelling and great use of English, because that's not a strength of mine. So I guess it would be understand your strengths, understand where you're not as strong, and try and either develop the areas that you're not as strong in. Obviously, that's a priority, but also understanding where no amount of development is actually going to make a huge amount of difference.
mm. I like something that you touched on there with the whole kind of creating the support network around you. Like,
Mm.
For example, you'll create the thing of, well, let's get in a room and let's whiteboard it, like create that support network around you. One of the things which I've started to do probably over the last maybe 4 or 5 years is find what I call my critical friend. So the person who is really good at that bit what I'm really bad at. So currently at a company who I'm at right now, there's a guy called Tom. Tom has an eye for detail on
Yeah,
words.
yeah,
Like, he should really be an English teacher, if I'm being honest. But he's good. So I can send over the guff, the high level, the kind of the stuff what we're good at, the creative
yeah,
thinking and this and that.
yeah,
And in our mind, we go, it's a great piece of work. And then I'll hand it over to Tom, and Tom be like, there's a word missing here, there's a full stop missing there, there's this, there's that. And it's that kind of dance, finding that person who counteracts them moments and
yeah,
identifying your
yeah.
your critical friend in the business who can help do that. I think has been critical for me, like really helping me for sure.
So important. So important with like friends at work and also socially as well, although it's not as tangible as it is with work things, but equally if they have a different way of viewing life or a different way of giving advice or a different way of looking at a problem, like there's loads of benefits of having friends that are ultimately similar in many ways, because those are the people that we're drawn to and come closer to, but if they have a slightly different perspective on something, then I think it's super valuable. Yeah, I completely
Nice.
agree. Critical friend, I like that phrase.
Nice. Yeah, I guess because we see that a lot of time, right? Like, if you think about your social media presence, whether it be Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, or the people on Facebook, like you can easily fall within that kind of echo chamber, right? Then people who have the same
Yeah,
opinions as
yeah.
you and the same views of you. I really like that. Kind of find that friend, but who has that unique tilt on it.
A little
Nice,
bit.
nice. Um, I want to think of a book. Okay, so I mean. We've talked about dyslexia, dyspraxia, but I think the general conception is, oh, you don't read then. I'm like, oh no, I read a lot. I really
Yeah,
enjoy reading.
yeah.
And that's a big, massive misconception, I think, a lot of times. what would be your favorite book? What's the one book what you kind of find yourself either going back to or recommending?
Referencing,
Or,
or
yeah.
yeah. Oof. That's also a tricky one. So I also really like reading, like yourself. And actually, I never used to read until about 6, 7 years ago. Never used to. My grandma got me the summary of Shakespeare, which was basically meant Shakespeare's most popular stories, but written in everyday English rather than Shakespearean. And I really enjoyed it. And then because she'd given it to me, and I was quite keen, she's a massive reader. I was like, it sparked a bit of a maybe I should get into this thing called reading. And then since then have loved doing it. But I do generally read more books that are applicable to either my work or developing myself. Like I read not a huge amount of fiction. So I think the top, I don't know, 2 or 3 I'd say would probably all be in that category rather than in the fiction category. Although I am actually trying to do more fiction now because I do think it's a nice way to expand your thinking and your creativity. But to answer your question, the one I'd probably reference first of all would be Tiny Habits, which is, most people know of Atomic Habits. Tiny Habits is similar, obviously the same concept, but I personally enjoyed it more than Atomic Habits. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been massive for me because it's all around breaking down something, like I was saying at the start, breaking down big change into very small chunks, latching and trying to build habits on top of existing ones. So like the classic one they give is you always brush your teeth every morning. So if you want to start a new habit, you should do it either before or after you're going to brush your teeth, because the trigger is something that's just ingrained in you. So I love that, and I use that now in work because we're talking about how you change behaviors in an organization, and it's all around breaking it right down. And what if we're big on this, and we're big on it at Profit as well. It's like experimenting with new behaviors, and you don't do it by saying, okay, all of a sudden I'm going to be more courageous, or I'm going to be more collaborative. So I think that construct and that way of thinking of saying you don't change by all of a sudden clicking your fingers, you break it right down, and you reinforce the habit by celebrating and by feeling good about it. That's something that I think is massively transferable. I love the Culture Code, which I've read a few times because it's actually, there's a lot of All Blacks references in there, like sweeping the sheds, because it talks about, and for me who love sport, it's like you can apply so many lessons from these high performing teams into the business context. And they talk about organizational changes in that as well. But I love that as a book, and the storytelling element of it I thought was great. And then probably finally I'd say would be Black Box Thinking. So Matthew Syed, big fan of his, and Black Box Thinking is one of the first books I read and found it fascinating. Not only the idea of learning about failure, but also the insight that they gave into the different industries and how they vary and the impact of that. Like the airline industry and how you learn from every mistake and it's publicized and everyone then changes in that way, versus medicine, which is generally mistakes are stigmatized, and it really harms someone's career and how they're perceived, and ultimately then how they can develop and grow and progress if they own up to mistakes and if mistakes are associated to them. But the downside of that is people sweep them under the rug and no one learns from them, and then no good comes of what is a very horrible event, and then it's just repeated in the future. So I found that fascinating because it applies it into real world context that you can understand. But then I think there's so much of it that's relevant to our working world today around, we're saying at the start around general appetite for risk is quite low. But if you do it in a controlled environment, the idea of failure being a fantastic opportunity to understand what you could do differently is super valuable.
Yeah. I love Black Box Inc. I'm so glad to hear that's on there. There's a great story in there, which I think it's Black Box anyway, where it's around a surgeon and a nurse, and the nurse knew the surgeon was doing something wrong, but it was a case of you can't challenge up, you couldn't challenge
It's
the
crazy.
hierarchy. I
It's
really love
it's
that.
often the psychological safety example, isn't it? It's like, I mean, that's what Amy Emerson constantly references. And how dangerous is that? Like, you're talking about, and how ingrained is that as a behavior when you're talking about someone's life? But because of the hierarchy and the system and like what is not condoned as a behavior, people don't want to do that. And actually, you see it in airplanes where co-pilots back in the days where it was very hierarchical, they're literally they know they're going to die, but they don't speak up because of what's ingrained in them. It's just crazy, but it makes sense when you think about these environments. It just seems so illogical when you think about it from like a human behavior perspective.
It's bonkers. It's
Yeah,
bonkers.
yeah,
Um, I want to get into your work a little bit more, but before we do, I asked you a question, which was, What's the one kind of lie you're still telling yourself?
Oh
What's
God.
your answer on that, Jack?
Um, that is a tricky one. The lie you're still telling yourself. I feel like actually it would come from a sort of double negative world, in that, you know, everyone has imposter syndrome. I think in certainly when they join new roles or and then you're in a new environment, and depending on how severe that feeling is or the environment, how long that goes on for, I think you can start to believe a lot more about yourself that just either isn't true or you think is much more exaggerated than it actually is in reality. So I think there's probably a lot in there that I'm still telling myself, like, I don't know, you always question how smart you are or how good you are in certain situations. I think there's probably some lies in there that I'm ultimately telling myself. Like, you have to look at, if you're able to progress and do well in a career, there's obviously you're doing something right, and perhaps there's those elements that should do better at banishing within our own heads, but there also can be the fuel that drive us on sometimes, so it's hard to completely banish them.
Nice. Yeah, it's it's an interesting one when you kind of going back to your kind of point there is like you can tell yourself how good you are, but often when that happens, you tend to overlook the luck what you've had.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
think about it all the time. There's times I'm like, great, I can talk about this and I can talk about that, and I'm doing this now. But I'm like, yeah, but actually, there's parts of it which were just down to being in the right place at the right time. Like you could
yeah.
be the best thing in the world, and sometimes it is that lucky break. So I love that
Mm-hmm.
you kind of thinking that going, actually, yeah, am I as good as or am I should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Like I think that's in what we do. Like
Yeah,
that's something
yeah.
what should be ingrained into everything, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's also one thing that's easy to say, and then in the reality of your day to day, it's much harder to do, and that's definitely me veering more towards the latter of those. But yeah, I do agree. It should be as present as you can make it, essentially.
So currently you're at Profit,
Yeah,
and I guess how did you go from doing kind of mechanics? What was it? Yeah, engineering.
mechanical
Sorry.
engineering. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Good question.
to being at Profit, doing what you're doing right now. Like, walk me through that.
Yeah,
Tell me about the kind of the
yeah.
mechanical engineering first.
I mean, mechanical engineering was quite classic in that I was strong at maths and physics. Wasn't very strong at any art subjects, or certainly wasn't very strong at English. So a little bit of process of elimination, but I also quite liked the practical element of mechanical engineering. When I got to university, I also liked the practical element of it, and I liked the fact that you were working in often quite random teams with often language barriers and solving a problem, all working together, divvying up work, and I liked that element of actually you could get to the whole. Some of its parts can sometimes be greater than the individual. I've phrased that wrong, but you know what I mean. Um, I like that element of it, and that sort of kept me going throughout university, I think. But towards the end, I realised that I didn't like the idea of being, I guess, working for a big engineering company, being sort of on a big site somewhere, away from, I guess, to be honest, at that stage in my life, away from the social and fun life of a big city. So that was a factor. And then I did actually try 2 engineering-based jobs for 3 months. I did engineering drawings for a furniture company. Um, yeah, it was kind of niche. And then I worked for a banknote manufacturing company as an engineering graduate, both for 3 months, while I was sort of finding my feet a little bit. And neither really scratched my itch, so to speak. So I did what a lot of people do when they fall into consulting. It's like, I don't really know what I want to do. I want some variety. This route is going to give me a good foundation and allow me the level of flexibility that I need at the moment, because I don't know what I want to do. So that's basically how I landed up at Accenture, and did 3 or 4 years there, where I think I said at the start, but I was very much sort of finding my feet and working out what the hell consultancy was and what the hell business was also. Um, and then started hearing about this thing called innovation, and started meeting a couple of people who were in that team at Accenture, and it sounded like really interesting work. And it was exciting, and it is exciting, but certainly at that time it was exciting. It was shiny. It was like workshops, which I found myself really enjoying. I liked the idea of sort of not being constrained, but then using a really structured and fun and interesting process to get to a much richer outcome. I love that idea of it. So sort of crowbarred my way into the innovation team, and the lead of that team, a guy called James Leach, who's big influence on at that stage of my career, was fantastic at sort of putting up with my crowbar my way in. But I guess that also taught me that determination can sometimes get you what you need. Got myself into that team, and then the integration with What If was a fantastic thing for me because I loved so much of what they brought from a playfulness perspective, how wonderful they were at codifying their different tools and techniques, and the power that can have with an audience, and then also that because they then applied the concept of experimentation in changing company culture and behavior. That was just fascinating to me. It came at a time where I was also feeling that in my own world. Like, we came out of COVID, or we went into COVID, where, as everyone did, there was a bit of novelty in that first lockdown, but also companies were like, what the heck are we going to do? And our team, when I was in the innovation team at the time, were brilliant. We really rallied around. We had all these different initiatives. So like at one point we had every morning, the whole team joined a coffee, and we rotated the host, and we did quizzes and games and everything. We then ended up doing end of the week sort of games, and you had dressed up in different groups, and you had teams and stuff. It was brilliant. But I quite quickly became one of the key organizing sort of forces behind that. And I loved not only the feeling of helping people through COVID, and people did say that actually the team environment we created really helped people through that difficult time, but also the idea that you were like creating this sense of fun and like helping people go back into their day behind a screen, but having either brought a level of energy to their day that might help them with their next task, or just brought a smile to their face. I love that feeling that I was sort of directly impacting that. So I think that coincided with joining What If, or What If coming, sort of integrating and understanding that you could sort of do this as a career, which I didn't actually know a huge amount about. And I sort of, by do this, I don't mean sort of run weekly quizzes, but change company team culture. Change team culture and change the way that people work and change people's behavior in a workplace. So those two things coincided really nicely, and was able to do that at What If for a while. And then I think, to be honest, just because I'd been at Accenture for almost 8 years at that point, I felt like a change. Profit opportunity came up, and they are super strong at, or we are super strong at, organization culture is the name of the practice, if you like. But yeah, culture change work. Loads of great partners who have a ton of experience. So I saw that as a really, really good learning opportunity, and it has been, which is fantastic. Along with doing a lot of other, they probably do a lot of brand work, which I've also tried my hand at from time to time, which I was interested in because it's a bit of variety. But I guess that's the journey to go where I think I can really see myself staying in now. The culture change space. I think I can see myself there for the foreseeable. I'm doing fascinating work with clients at the moment, and like it's exactly the kind of thing I wanted to do when I decided to join Profit. So yeah, it's been a great move, a long journey, but yeah, it's, I think in my head, a fairly logical one, but also a fairly serendipitous one. Like, I'm a big believer in, I'm very lucky to get where I am. I'm continue to be lucky in almost every day with things that seem to be sort of either presented or opportunities that you have to take, of course, but the things that sort of come my way, I'm very grateful for, but equally very aware that I've had some good breaks over my career. So yeah, there we go. But not really a whistle stop tour. I was going to say whistle stop tour.
No, that's good. That's good. I think to me the best careers, the best connectors, the best kind of thinkers have to have that squiggly career. It's
Yeah.
less of a nice linear path and more like crazy paving.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I think if you're working in innovation, or you're working in design, or you're working in some form of employee experience, people experience, or whatever, like you need that. You need that craziness, that squiggle,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Well, it brings
What?
such a rich. It's like if everyone has that. And actually, we did a piece of work recently for a client all around how do you drive greater cognitive diversity within teams and company. And a big part of it, and Matthew Side has a great book on it called Rebel Ideas. A big part of it is recognizing what different people bring to the table, and then creating an environment so that they can bring it to the table. Because not only is it, to the point earlier around the doctor and the nurse, not only is it safer, but it's also, you're going to get to such a better outcome, and you need it in today's world, right? It's changing so quickly. The need to be agile and innovative has never been, creative has never been greater, but you don't get that from being in a very homogenous group or environment.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's how ideas evolve, right? It's because
Yeah,
if someone goes, yeah, but if you thought about it this way, like that diversity is
yeah,
massive. It's it's interesting. I'm talking a lot at the moment around when you look at the employee experience, and I had this conversation years ago in learning development, but ultimately your people are subscribing. Like if it's a subscription service, like how you subscribe
yeah,
to Netflix or whatever, people are subscribing to your work. They describe based on the products, the services, experiences, and interactions, and whether they're going to subscribe for another day, another month, another
yeah,
year.
yeah. So
And
true.
but I think sometimes you couldn't get to them without having a bit of a background in product design or having a bit of something in engineering, mechanical
Yeah,
engineering. Like you
yeah,
need to be able to reverse engineer and see things differently. And
massively.
yeah, I think it's a nice way of putting it. Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
So I guess talking about profit then. So I don't know much about profit. Well, I do. I know a few people who work there,
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
being one of them. But yeah, like what? And I know you're probably not going to be able to share too much because I mean you both know the life of NDAs is an absolute joy.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's kind of tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing at Profit.
Yeah, so I guess 30-second overview of Profit. So it started as a very much a brand consultancy, and that's still where our heartland is. But over the years, it's evolved to do brand work, but then logically, there's sort of natural streams that either come off the back of that or lead into brand work. So you can see an evolution over time. But it's like we now do a lot of marketing work. We also do experience and innovation work, and then organization and culture, which is, I think I said at the start, but that's where now I am predominantly focused. And so fortunately, that's where all of my work is centered around at the moment. And can't say clients, but big multinational companies, sort of 40, 50, 60,000 person in terms of size. So as you can imagine, big cultural challenges that come with that. And both of them are quite established as organizations. So, and have had great success over the years. But with the macro environment changing as it is, increased competition, all of the classic sort of criteria that come into the recognizing of the need to change your culture, they're both at a point where it's like, okay, what are we actually going to do about this? How do we make our people, or how do we help create an environment for our people to help us grow as a business? So we're not just creating a nice culture for the sake of creating a nice culture. It's very much in line with what we're trying to do as a business, and actually shifting the organization's mindset. And that's a big part of what we did at the start of this engagement, is like, how do you help the business and people within the business see that culture, like your organization's culture, isn't something that happens on the side. It's like, it's everything. It's like how you do what you're trying to do at a business level. It's like how you work, it's how you show up, it's how you behave and interact with employees. It's like, it's integral. And a lot of that is a lot of the fight, if you like, as I'm sure you've experienced, is helping people understand that. The work itself, I guess, in a sense, once you have a little bit of that buy-in, becomes a bit easier. Once you know where you're trying to go as a business, it's actually not that hard to define the culture that you need in order to achieve that. The really hard bit is then going from where you are today to then the culture that you're trying to get to tomorrow. And that's the stage of the journey that we're at the moment. So we've defined where they're trying to get to. We've done a really robust research piece on where they are today, like a number of interviews, ethnographic safaris, a big survey where we're getting as many different perspectives and countries' perspectives as possible.
Nice.
To say, okay, here are the changes that we then need to make moving forwards. And we're now at the stage of actually making those changes and trying to understand, how do we go from what's essentially still words on a page, even though people are aware of it and are really excited about what it can bring, to actually changing how people show up and behave on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, as I said at the start, a fantastically exciting journey to be involved in. I feel very lucky that I'm able to, what has been a passion of mine for a while, to actually be applying it in a real environment, and also at the prospect of feeling like I, in some tiny shape or form have contributed to creating a better environment for people to either be more themselves, but also to be at their best at work, I feel like that's just, for me, nothing more motivating.
It's an interesting one. That thing right at the start around passion about helping people develop and grow, and throughout this whole conversation, it's come time and time again. And
Yeah.
I will come to it in just a sec. But there's an element which I hear from you, Jack. Like there's an element of playfulness. Like when I
Mm.
think about, when you think about consultancies, there's always this thing of you've got to be this polished person and you've got to
Yeah.
know the answer for everything. And for me, I think there's so much value in me saying, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
find it out, but I don't know it right now. And it's interesting. I think at consultancies, we can't be seen to not have the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So
that
true.
tends to be a bottleneck. How do you overcome that? Like, do you? And I guess it's more as a general question rather than you, Jack, and Profit.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
how do you overcome something like that?
Oh, it's like, first of all, I don't think I have an answer to that because I don't think I have overcome it. And it's something that I still try and work on to this day because it's so funny that my wife tells me off the whole time for it because and actually friends as well, like I struggle to not jump into problem solving mode. It's like, because that's like what we do and you have to give an answer to solve a problem because that's like what we're paid to do. Actually, then it's not always the right way to approach things. Okay, fine. In a client context, sometimes saying you don't know the answer, ultimately, if they're paying you to bring you the answer, you need to bring it eventually. But in a personal context, sometimes you just need to be there as like a pair of ears and show that you're listening rather than trying to respond. And I think it's such a valuable trait to have, but it's such a hard thing to do because it goes against human nature. And I guess especially for me, because I'm doing it on a trying to do it on a day-to-day basis, it's much harder to do. But I guess to answer your question, it's trying to understand like where you can and should come in, and also understanding where that expertise and capabilities lie. Where those expertise and capabilities perhaps don't stretch. And if you are in an environment where you feel like you probably should say you don't know the answer, it's a bit like anything, right? It's not, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, or I don't know, or here's how we're going to find out. It's like, what are you going to do about it, as well as admitting where your shortcomings are. I guess that applies in personal life as well as at work. But I'm by no means perfected that, so I might have to listen to some of your other podcasts to hear what your other users' perspectives are on that.
I don't think anyone's cracked it yet, to be honest.
Yeah, no.
No, I definitely haven't. I'm like, I don't know. And then, like you say, it'll be a follow up with, but leave it with me.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'll go out and Google my life way.
Yeah,
It's an interesting one, and I think we're kind of there's something around that transparency and that psychological
yeah.
safety to say I don't know. And from a consultancy, it's harder, right? Because like you say, you brought in as the expert, you brought in as the person who knows, who's the fountain of all knowledge, and sometimes it's not that. And I think the other time with consultancies, depend on which consultancy you use and who you've got. Often consultancies from, I've been on both sides of that fence. I've brought
Yeah,
consultants
yeah,
in and I've been a consultant. And I think you get a good one and, they're in it with a long call with you. They're turning the decks into actions, rolling the sleeves up
yeah,
and making it happen. And then you've got the ones who will give you a deck and then parachute out as fast as possible.
yeah.
I know you, Jack. I know you're not that one. So let's put that on the record. But I guess I want to kind of get into that thing of growth and that development. And as a consultant, you're doing that with your team who you have around you. You're doing that with a
Hmm.
client. But what's been your biggest growth moment this year?
Ooh, this year. I think actually I've been um, quite good at applying my tiny habits mind to my personal life, which I like did the classic. To be fair, the last year or two I've been okay at it, but resolutions and then you don't do them, etc. But I've this year been quite good at actually saying, I've read Tiny Habits, read Atomic Habits. What am I going to do? So like at the end of brushing my teeth, like I do all these different things now. It's kind of crazy actually, but it's helped me stop biting my nails a bit. It's helped me get better at golf. It's helped me strengthen an ankle injury that I had. It's helped me be a bit more present because I do sort of breath work. So you can start to see all the different things I do after brushing my teeth, which is kind of crazy, but that's been a really simple but powerful way that I've actually been able to start to achieve some of the things that I set out to achieve at the start of the year. I think from a work context, we're getting to a stage. So we started this work with the client I referenced earlier at the start of the year, where we define the new culture. We're now getting into how they actually bring it to life, and there's real excitement around the organization around like what this could bring and the opportunity and the environment that it could create for people who perhaps haven't felt like they've had that historically. That feels really special, to feel like we've not only played a part in it, but also created a sense of belief that this is legit. We're not just coming in and throwing a new culture on the wall and making some posters. Like, we are doing something about it already. So I think that part is, I'm very pleased with. And then at home as well, like, it's always there's an element of fatherhood that doesn't escape you. Lockie's now he's just turned 3. So I guess if I'm looking at 2023, he's been in quite a formative part of his life. We've potty trained him, which is, nice. I say, a massive success, because it's taken a very long time. So that's probably the greatest achievement this year. But he's also just, growing and learning every day. And like, if you feel like you've had a moment with him where you've taught him something, or he's picked something up from you, and it's a positive habit, then there's few better things in life than that. So yeah, I think on a very small level, it'd be the impact that I feel like I've had with Lockie, but lots of other very different but other examples in there.
Nice. I guess quite a couple more
varied.
questions. No, that was really nice. That was really nicely put. One of the things which we hear a lot of the time with consultants is about relationship, right? Like, sometimes you're going in cold. And when I say cold, I mean you don't necessarily know the people before you build that relationship with them. And then afterwards, relationships build. I guess for any consultants who are new coming into this kind of into this way of working as consultants, and for me, I created this something called the Dare Canvas, which is to help that. But I guess, what tips would you give to someone coming in and kind of, from a kickoff, building their relationships to have a great relationship with you and the client? What's your go-to?
Firstly, I want to hear about the Dare Canvas in a minute. But I was talking about some of this the other day, because the feedback that I was giving them was that actually they came into the call or the meeting, and it was like, because we're on a tight timeline, they're paying us, and we've got to get to these deliverables, straight into the agenda. And actually, I think that's the biggest mistake that anyone can make in building a relationship. Like, if you find at the start of the project it's quite difficult, but you can have some form of kickoff that gives you some ammunition, if you like, to use in the later projects. But whatever it is that you can understand about the other person in the relationship, okay, in this example it's a client, whatever you can do to understand a bit more about them as a person, what makes them tick, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, like, do that as early on as possible, because it just gives you so much to riff off in any later engagement. Like, if it's at the start of the meeting, from a week on, you can ask them about, I don't know, how their child's getting on at school, or how was that performance that they were going to that evening. Like, really simple things, but like, no one wants to join any form of interaction just going straight into the meat and drink of the conversation. Like, everyone likes to talk about themselves, and you feel infinitely closer to someone if you feel like they know something about you. And actually, right at the start of my career, when someone told me about this, I used to be quite systematic about it. Like, I used to sort of keep notes, certainly on very senior clients and ones that I want to try and build a relationship with. I try and keep notes on, I don't know, whatever it was that they told me that they were interested in, whatever it was their kids were up to. And yes, that's a bit scripted, but at the start, it helped me sort of build that muscle of, it's important to remember these things. It is valuable, and you can then use it in a future context. And when you start to see the impact that can have, it then, I don't know, makes you more likely to do it in the future. So, and like, you can create these environments as much as possible in those first interactions, obviously by asking questions that can sometimes seem quite forced, but it can be as simple as, what are you up to at the weekend? But also in kickoffs, even the energizers that you run, it's not an introduction to hear their role and the number of years that they've been at the company. Okay, fine, that is important. But it's also an energizer to understand, draw what they're passionate about on a piece of paper, or what's their superpower, or I don't know. You think of so many different playful things that just get them talking a little bit about themselves, that as a nice side point, give you ammunition to then use in the future, but equally helps build a connection with them at the time. Which I know I'm preaching to the converted because you do that so well, but yeah, it's something I've found to be very effective over the years.
I love your approach on there's two things that jumped out there. Very human, playful again. And it's, I know you anyway, so I'm trying to not be too biased, but you are a very human centered, very playful type of person. And I like the idea of that systematic approach. I remember back in my start of career, I used to do like little mind maps, and then I used to pull them out
Nice.
and have them ready just in
Yeah.
case. But I think so. I've got a theory on this, and tell me if it might be nothing related. But I think for people like when I got diagnosed with diagnosed, it feels weird to even say it, but got told I had dyslexia and dyspraxia in
Yeah.
uni. And they said one of the big things is you will not remember instant, like your short term recall isn't great. Long term's great, short term
Yeah.
isn't. So we can have a moment now and you may say, "Oh, my dog's called Rufus," and then I'll forget about it because we're getting into
Yeah.
the meat later on. And it's like, I need to come up again. It comes back to the thing what we said earlier, creating them coping mechanisms and them support networks, and something like your systematic taking notes is
Yeah.
perfect for
Yeah.
that.
It's just
Nice.
understanding what works for you. I think that's the biggest thing with any, I guess, job. But if you're trying to learn or grow, it's like understand what works for you, what doesn't. Try things. If they don't work, change it. There's definitely things that I've tried over the years that really haven't worked or I'm not able to do. But it's like understanding why that is and then trying to change the approach, basically.
Nice. Um, right at the start, I asked you what you want to be. When you was asked when you grow up. As you know, Jack, as you've actually threaded throughout this whole conversation, you never really stop growing. You never really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stop developing. So I guess if I was to ask you this question now, Jack, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say now?
I love that you're subtly saying that I'm very young, which I'm not, but I appreciate the compliment. I don't know. I think there's parts of, I think a big part for me would be to feel like I'm a really important player in creating this like mega rich growth environment at a company. So like whether that's in a chief people role or in some kind of capacity where I feel like I can really directly impact the culture of a company so that the people that come to work are like growing exponentially. They're having a great time. They look back on it and say, that was a really key part of my career that was is instrumental in shaping what I then end up doing later in life, or whatever, but equally had a great time along the way. I think without putting a sort of role on it, I feel like if I can be doing that on a regular, hopefully permanent basis, then that would be success for me. I guess naturally it's much easier to do that at a smaller company than it is at a big multinational organization, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think what I'm loving at the moment, and to be honest, have done for the last 5-6 years, is I'm still very much exploring, where I might end up long term, and that's perhaps why I'm still in consulting, because it gives you that fantastic, experience in what else is out there, but also flexibility in the future to go into a wide array of different routes. So I feel like I'm narrowing down slowly but surely on where I want to focus, but wouldn't say I'm completely clear on that yet.
Nice. I feel like your logline, Jack, should be kind of um, the most human-centered, playful explorer. That
Ooh,
feels
nice. I'm in the
nice. Just
market for, as I said at the start, I find it a very hard thing to do. So thank you. I'll take that and get it on the LinkedIn.
um,
Yeah.
Jack, where can people follow you? Where can they keep up to date? And where can they actually chat with you?
Yeah, I don't do. It's probably LinkedIn, to be honest, because I don't do a huge amount on Instagram, or I've never really clicked with Twitter. So yeah, it'd be LinkedIn, I guess. But always up for sort of random ad hoc conversations. You never know where they might go, and yeah, I guess LinkedIn would be the main place. Yeah, Jack Cooper on LinkedIn.
Nice. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great experience, and yeah, big fan of the podcast. So looking forward to seeing this live.
Yep, I can't wait to release it, my friend. Okay, take it easy.
Cheers, though.